Hi, I'm Carmen.
And I'm Steven, and this is Vienna Past and Present,
where we walk through the gilded and sometimes not so gilded halls of Vienna's history. So, we all know that skiing is basically the only sport that Austria is really good at. Well, maybe we don't all know that, but I'm just going to assert that. But would you come to Austria to go skiing indoors? Long before indoor ski halls became the stuff of Dubai holidays, Vienna, of all places, decided that indoor skiing was the next big thing.
Yes, in 1927, right in the middle of a famously mountainous, snow-covered country packed with actual outdoor skiing, somebody thought, you know what the city needs? An indoor ski hall built inside of an old train station. This story has some surprises, too, on top of that one. Like a recipe for a 1920s version of fake snow, a shooting being open for an incredibly short time, and prices that modern skiers would find very, very reasonable.
Yeah, so that's going to be our story today. The history of Vienna's indoor ski hall, which was called the Schneepalast, which would be Snow Palace, translated into English. My main source for this today is an article published in Wien Museum Magazin under the title Der Schneepalast 1927, so that would be the Snow Palace 1927. One of the authors of that article is a friend and ex-colleague of mine,
Cool.
Which is how I first heard about this story. So I asked her how she came across the story, and she said that she used to live in the area that we're going to be talking about today, and as a historian, decided to Google her neighborhood, and that's how she stumbled across a newspaper article about the Schneepalast, did some more research, and ended up publishing her own article a couple of years later.
That is really cool, and I just want to point out, are we just one of those shows that reads Wikipedia and summarizes it for you? Not all the time. This is cool. It's a cool connection.
We have some other sources too. So we are going to link the article in the show notes. It's officially only available in German, but your browser translator will provide a pretty decent translation for all you non-German speakers out there if you want to check it out. So, Steven, had you heard of a ski slope in Vienna before? What's your association in general with indoor skiing?
Gosh, I think, like most people, I associate it with the Middle East now, but quickly did a little research. Vienna was actually the first, and there wasn't another attempt at an indoor ski hill until the 1960s in the UK, which allegedly featured plastic bristles instead of snow. So that should give you an idea of the technology levels we're going to be dealing with today. We're talking about decades before that plastic bristle attempt.
Indeed. All right, so let's get into it. How did this thing come about?
I'll throw in also, why did this come about? But something tells me we may not be able to answer that today. That'll be the stretch goal.
Yeah, let's see if we manage that. But first, Steven, could you set the scene for us? What was happening in Vienna at the time, late 1920s?
So, 1927, in July, there was a major riot in Vienna sparked by the acquittal of 3 nationalist paramilitarists that ended with riots setting the Supreme Court in Vienna on fire. That maybe that'll be its own episode at some point. But that's the kind of environment we're in now in the 1920s. It's not exactly like this peaceful, hunky-dory kind of time. We were between some pretty big wars. Definitely a bold time to build fragile infrastructure downtown, I would say.
Yes. So against that backdrop, we have one Dagfinn Carlsen.
Great name.
A great name, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he was a Norwegian ski jumper and film star who married an Austrian woman and moved to Vienna. And while he was living in Vienna, he visited an expo in Berlin. And, this was the era of expos and world fairs, I think.
Right.
It's how people found out about things. I don't know. Is that
apparently
the internet of the 1920s? Go to an expo and see what's going on?
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I wonder.
So he went to this expo that was about leisure activities, and it featured an indoor winter landscape, and that gave him an idea to build something similar in Vienna.
Okay, yeah, this is definitely peak expo if you're going to a leisure activity expo. They were definitely huge. Anyway.
Right. So out of that, the idea for the Wiener Schneepalast, or the Viennese Snow Palace, was born. First, Carlsen had to find an appropriate location for this new idea of his, and he found that location in the northwest train station of Vienna. That train station doesn't exist anymore, but it was the second biggest train station during Habsburg times, and it connected Vienna to Prague, and then further on to Dresden and Berlin. So it was one of the main kind of connectors between Vienna and other parts of the monarchy, and then Germany as well. But after the collapse of the Habsburg monarchy, the train station lost its importance as the main connector between these lands. So the Habsburg lands of Bohemia and Moravia, which are now the Czech Republic, and these parts of Germany, and so the train station was closed in 1924.
Okay, I'll just take this time to say, a fake ski hill where part of your empire used to be. I think there's some joke in there somewhere, right?
Yeah, probably.
Anyway,
by the time Carlsen was looking for a location for his indoor ski hall, the Northwest train station had been out of operation for several years, and Carlsen decided that it was just the place to build a year-round permanent indoor ski hall for the citizens of Vienna. He needed a large building to accommodate his grand ideas, and the Austrian Federal Railways, which still owned the building, were interested in putting this empty building to profitable use. So it was kind of a win-win situation. The ski hall was built in a matter of months. Carlsen applied for a license to operate a commercial business inside the train station in the summer of 1927. He got some investors on board as well, including a department store and a beer company, and then he got to work building a ski slope, a ski jump, and a toboggan run.
Okay.
So construction started in July of 1927, and the opening was scheduled for September of the same year.
Wow, okay, so he was quite a hustler for 1927. I still think of this time as like the time where people would have hardened ideas of what belongs in a city or what you can do with this. And yeah, he sounds very entrepreneurial and like visionary and okay.
Yeah, he had ideas, and he was very good, or he, seemed to be very efficient in kind of realizing his ideas.
Yeah.
Because he only went to this expo a few months before, and then he had this idea, and then he got his license.
Months, wow.
Yeah, this is months.
Interesting.
And so he really, was gung-ho, and yeah, kind of a go-getter, I guess.
Yeah.
Anyway, so at this point, if you're following along, you might be asking yourself, did they even know how to make fake snow in 1927? Like, how are they going to do this?
Yeah, that crossed my mind.
And the answer is no, not really. So,
okay.
The situation at the time was that there was a British diplomat named Lawrence Clark, I'm going to butcher this, Askoff, I have no idea how to pronounce this. Anyway, this British guy, he was the inventor of something called snow substitute. Any guesses what that could have been?
Gosh, okay, I would just imagine like blocks of ice shaved down poorly, maybe if there's something else in there like fluffy cotton. I'm just imagining what they had around, but I have no idea. I kind of figured they wouldn't care about things being like highly flammable and deadly, so I thought cotton.
Well, you're not too far off. The fluffy cotton is kind of going in the right direction. So, snow substitute at the time, what it actually was a chemical concoction that was made to look like snow, but it was neither cold nor could it melt. So it basically had none of the qualities of snow, really. It just kind of looked like it.
Yeah, okay.
So it was a mixture of, get this, sodium carbonate, which is commonly found in washing detergent, sawdust.
Oh, gosh. Okay.
And water. So quite a mix, it's like soap, sawdust, and water.
Oh, yeah.
And Carlsen actually brought Askoff. How would you pronounce this name? Askoff?
Okay, it's Ayscough.
Yeah.
Ayscough? I would say Ayscough, but I feel like some of these British-ish names, like that Cough, it could go out like 10 ways. So, Ayscough. Okay, we're going to say that, and, people can help us. Let us know if you know.
Yeah. Ayscough, something like that. In any case,
right.
He was the guy who invented the snow substitute, right? And so Carlsen brought him on board to help him to actually put his Winter Wonderland together. So he got the actual guy with his fake snow to help him kind of get this all off the ground.
Wonderful inventor. Okay. Yeah, I'm just wondering how this is like on your skin or your eyes, how that would feel after a day of skiing. Wow.
We're going to get to that.
Okay.
But anyway, so now that they have the snow sorted, they're good to go, right? Well, not exactly. There were a few other hurdles that they had to jump. So one of the main ones was that, they set about transforming this train station and rebuilding it and building, a ramp and the ski slope and everything. And only after they had basically rebuilt the whole thing and 150 tons of fake snow was already on its way from a factory outside of Vienna.
It's a lot of soap.
A lot of soap soap and sawdust.
Yeah.
So 150 tons of this fake snow was on its way to Vienna, and only at that point did the city intervene and demand an extra permit, because at that point they claimed that the ski slope did not serve a transportation purpose, which, I mean, fair.
Okay.
And they demanded an extra permit to use the train station for non-transportation purposes. And so this was an extra delay that they sort of hadn't anticipated. It was, you know, a bureaucratic back and forth trying to get this permit sorted. And so the opening was delayed from the originally planned time in September to 3 months later. And it only finally opened on November 26th, 1927.
Okay, we know how fast Dagfinn moves, all right? 3 months. He could, like, have an entirely different concept up and running, okay? His skill isn't he judged. So that's a pretty big delay.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think if we look at this timeline, he started building in July, wanted to open in September. So the whole building process took,
fast.
less time than getting this permit figured out.
Wow, yeah.
But anyway, they did manage to get their permit. They opened on November 26th, 1927, but things didn't exactly go as planned with the opening either.
Okay.
So Carlsen had planned a big opening event with an opening speech given by the Vienna mayor at the time, Karl Seitz. So the mayor comes, he gives his speech, and then after he completes his speech, the mayor got into his car to leave when suddenly a bullet pierced the window of the car. So basically an assassination attempt on the mayor.
Wow.
And he was able to duck out of the way and was unharmed. And the shooter was arrested. It was a guy who belonged to a paramilitary group. And the 1920s were a time where there were lots of paramilitary groups, you know, sort of post-war. It was still a very uncertain time. So you had these sort of little militias that sprang up.
Okay.
And he belonged to one of these.
All right.
And, you know, attempted to assassinate the mayor. And so, of course, the assassination attempt made front page news and created a lot of publicity for the Snow Palace, because it was, of course, reported that this happened at the opening of this new indoor ski hall. And so this actually brought out a lot of people to the Snow Palace in its opening days. And it brought out so many people and so many crowds that the police actually had to partially close the building due to the large crowds on the first couple days that it was open.
Wow, okay, what a mixed bag here. Like, I would think this would kind of test the limits of, like, all publicity is good publicity if you have just immediate shootings of high-profile people or attempted shootings. But yeah, I guess, like, the entire city would know that you exist on day one, basically. I mean, we were making fun of these people for, you know, making a mountain when they were surrounded by them, but obviously we were wrong, at least about the interest level.
Yeah, you'd think an assassination attempt, it really could go either way, you know. But I guess it brought out the curiosity in people, and so they went to go see what this place was.
Mm-hmm.
So the Snow Palace opened under very dramatic circumstances, and it was very well visited in its opening days. What it actually offered was 2 ski slopes, a toboggan run with an electric lift system, which I assume was very modern at the time.
That sounds very cool, yeah, for the 20s. Wow.
Yeah, I think that was really at the sort of cutting edge of what was available at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it also even had a ski jump that allowed jumps of up to 20 meters. But apparently that was reserved for competitive jumpers. I mean, I guess it would probably be a massive liability if just anybody could go down the ski jump, you know, on a soap and sawdust concoction of snow.
I mean, yeah, like whatever liability meant back then, but right.
So anyway, apparently the ski jump was for competitive jumpers. I don't exactly know how they, you know, checked for that. But I guess you had to have some kind of credentials.
I'm sure it was really stringent back then, right?
And so the ski jump itself, you know, you could jump up to 20 meters off the ski jump. And it was this very large wooden structure that had mats on it with then 10 centimeters of fake snow laid on top. And I mean, somehow, despite the fake snow being made of essentially washing detergent and sawdust, Carlsen also insisted on keeping the temperature just above freezing to make the experience more authentic.
Okay. I mean, gosh, I feel like he's doing a lot with not a lot, but also kind of a lot. I don't know. It's like very high tech. I'm impressed, actually.
It is high tech. I mean, it was ambitious, the entire undertaking, I would say.
Yeah.
And actually, in the article that I mentioned, where I'm getting a lot of this information from, and that's going to be linked in the show notes, there's a lot of photos, actually, too. So historical photos of what this all looked like. And it's very cool. So I definitely recommend people to have a look. There's an image of the ski jump as it was being built, and you can kind of see how the whole thing actually look.
Cool.
So on top of that stuff, there was also a rental shop and a restaurant on site.
Okay.
Yeah, so you had everything you need.
Very modern. Yeah.
And the facility was open from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. And I mean, I have to say, that's like better than opening hours now in Vienna. So the 1920s was doing some stuff right.
Oh, you're right. From what you said, yeah.
Yes. Our grocery stores close at 8. And you could go skiing until 10 p.m. apparently at this place. So
Yeah. Wow.
And as we mentioned at the very top, the prices were very reasonable. You could buy a ticket for 2 hours of skiing or ski jumping or whatever, tobogganing, at the cost of 1.5 shillings, which would be the equivalent of about €7 today.
That is crazy cheap. Like, how much is a lift ticket for skiing there today, like if you were to go somewhere near the city?
Well, near the city is not that expensive because we don't have really big mountains around here. But what is your guess?
Okay.
What is your guess in general?
Oh,
The U.S., well, I'm not going to say anything. What's your guess?
yeah.
Let's say you decide to go skiing to the most expensive place in Austria and you just buy a day ticket when you get there.
Expensive.
What's your guess how much that would cost?
Okay, there's a lot of factors here. I haven't gone skiing in a couple years. I go around here in Seattle where it's kind of like a big corporate mountain kind of vibe. The most expensive in Austria, typical expensive. So I would say $80 would get you like a ticket, but that wouldn't get you any rental. Because I'm thinking like maybe it's a little cheaper. How did I do?
How much does it cost where you're going skiing?
I think typically, as of a couple years ago, if you were just going to like walk on, I think it would be like $100 would like get you on the hill. And then everything else you would have to then rent, which would be like often another 100. Or then if you're doing a season pass, this is like hundreds of dollars for like a season pass at one. And then maybe there's some like, reciprocity. But yeah, what is it like there?
So your guess is actually pretty good.
Okay.
It's about, the most expensive places are like St. Anton or Lech, areas in like Tyrol. And it's somewhere around like €75 a day for like the lift ticket. And then you'll have rental on top of that, which will be, €50 a day or something.
Okay, I'm going to Google this and just see what a daily lift ticket is. Crystal Mountain is a big one around here.
One of the reasons that I asked you is because I haven't been skiing for some years now in the US, but when I do come to the US, I usually will go to Colorado or Utah or whatever to go skiing. And if you buy day tickets there, it's like $250. It's insane. You basically have to buy these season passes for it to be in any way reasonable.
Oh. Yeah, but that's actually, that makes sense. So I'm looking here now for Crystal Mountain, at least near Seattle, there's different prices for every day.
Oh.
So if you go on a weekend, it's more expensive. If you're going to go like on a Tuesday, you can go for like half price.
Oh,
so this is, I haven't realized this. I usually just will show up.
Yeah, I think Austria is looking into that sort of model too. That you have dynamic pricing, basically, so it's like cheaper when there's fewer people.
Yeah, but it's really like if you go more than 3 times, just get a season pass. Like they're trying to kind of force you into that. And
so what is the day pass cost there now?
So if I was just to go on the weekend, which is typical for most people, right?
Yeah.
Then I would pay $160, and that that's no rental or anything. That's just like an adult price, 1 day. So yeah, I wasn't that correct, but then whatever. It's around 100 if you go like on a non-peak day.
Okay.
But
yeah, but
anyway,
it's wild. There's a lot more American skiing in Europe because in some cases it's actually cheaper to fly here, ski here.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah. And people here are up in arms about it costing €70 because that's already very expensive. It used to be a lot cheaper.
It used to be €7 is what you just said.
Exactly.
So we bring this podcast, okay? If you want a deal, bring this podcast and play it for them. That's what we're saying.
These are the prices I expect. €7, please.
This is no Schneepalast, is it? You'd say that.
Exactly.
Anyway, the Snowpalace sounds shockingly good right now. So when did the shit hit the fan, so to speak? Because this is short-lived, wasn't it?
Yes. It was not super smooth sailing. So Carlsen had very big plans for ski courses and skiing competitions at his snow palace, but after the delay in opening and this dramatic assassination attempt at the opening, there were a couple of new problems that came up. So firstly, the snow palace had been built at an exorbitant cost of about 700,000 shillings which would be about 3.3 million euros today.
Okay.
And, they're selling tickets for €7, so they've got a lot of ground to make up here.
Yeah.
And so to recoup those costs, Carlsen was going to have to really have a lot of visitors come. But after the initial crowds, the numbers began to decline quite quickly.
Okay.
And then on top of that, and probably very much contributing, was that news began to spread that the fake snow caused people to itch and to have breathing difficulties. On top of which... That's
not funny, but go figure.
I mean, considering it's made of sawdust and soap, it's not shocking. And then apparently it would also tear holes into your clothes if you fell.
Whoa.
Which, I mean, I don't want to know what that looks like on your skin if it's tearing holes into your clothing.
Filling it full of soap immediately. And a part of me thinks that, this is maybe structural, where it's you have 10 centimeters of this fake stuff, you fall down, you're probably scraping some weird wooden ramp.
Yeah.
Anyway. And wait, you're probably wearing... What are you wearing anyway? You're probably just wearing some random wool. I see these old pictures of skiers. It's just the stuff that they wear to church, and then they just put skis on it. Or that's my interpretation of it. It looks barely different than clothes you would wear.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But that does not sound good.
No. And yeah, actually, I don't know what they would be wearing, but yeah, you're probably right that, it's not like the ski gear that we have today would have been available at the time. Right? It's some woolen outfit or whatever your normal cotton.
Yeah, right. I feel here, if you go to a ski hill, you'll see some ancient picture of the people who used to ski here, in the 30s or something. And I swear it's just women in dresses, and they'll be wearing little heels, and they'll just strap a ski to it, and these are kind of the badass skiers of the time. And maybe I'm getting that wrong. Maybe that's just what they're posing with. But a lot of pictures like that, and I'm always left being what? Aren't you freezing and uncomfortable? Anyway.
Yeah, no, you're right. Those are sort of the historical photos that you see. And, the skis at the time really were wooden boards with a leather strap that I think you tied to your shoe. I mean, it was not more than that. So you're skiing essentially on sawdust with these very primitive wooden skis.
Yeah. I just, I thought, the whole time, skiing in the piles of sawdust soap, that's going to catch up with him. Dagfinn.
Yeah, so poor Dagfinn, the soap sawdust didn't work out that well.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, we're in Vienna, and so people pretty quickly realized that if they wanted to go skiing, they could just go to the mountains surrounding Vienna and not pay anything. And so the winter of 1927-1928, when the Snow Palace was open, was also a very snowy winter, and so there wasn't really a very good reason to be skiing inside on sawdust, right? You could just go outside.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Right.
And so as a result of that, over time, visitors declined. And ultimately, on March 10th, 1928, Carlsen was forced to declare the Snow Palace insolvent. So it had been, at that point, operational for 103 days. And during that time, the Snow Palace had welcomed 10,000 skiers, 12,000 tobogganers, and 40,000 spectators.
Okay.
So pretty decent numbers.
That does not seem like a poor performance. But yeah, I mean, that is a lot for, if you're charging €7, that's a lot to recoup.
Exactly. And I mean, I guess operational costs were not that low either. So it was not enough to kind of keep them afloat. Carlsen did initially hope that, going through kind of the insolvency procedure, that he would be able to kind of write off some debts or something and then be able to resume operations in the fall. Mm-hmm. But that was not to be. So the insolvency case basically totally dashed those dreams, and he had to shut the place down. And so he would go on to blame the city of Vienna for the failure of the Snow Palace, claiming that the delayed opening was basically the reason that there weren't enough visitors and the reason that he couldn't recoup his costs because it wasn't open long enough, according to him. And so in the end, the Snow Palace disappeared almost as quickly as it had appeared. What was supposed to be the world's first permanent year-round indoor ski hall was dismantled in October 1928, just shy of 1 year of its opening, and the wood was sold to minimize the debt that was owed.
Wow.
Yeah. So today, neither the Northwest train station building nor memories of the Snow Palace really remain. After the Snow Palace went bankrupt and was sold off and was closed down, the building itself was heavily damaged in World War II and was also torn down ultimately in 1952. And so very few people remember the train station today, and even fewer know the story of the Snow Palace. Until now, because we're telling you the story.
Yeah, gosh, dismantled and sold for scrap. That is a harsh ending. But this is a cool little story.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting story. I had not heard about it before either, but like I said, I know one of the historians who wrote this article, and I also asked her how well known she thinks this story is, and she said it's really not very well known at all. There are occasional newspaper articles apparently in winter that mention it. I've never seen any of those.
Oh.
And she also said that it got a bit of attention a few years ago when there were discussions about building a new ski slope with artificial snow in the 22nd district of Vienna.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, I think at this point, sometimes there's like this novelty aspect of like making a sport indoors. So maybe indoor skiing. Sometimes they like become their own branch of the sport. Like indoor soccer is just kind of a different thing now. I don't know, even though I guess I'd never see myself doing indoor skiing. I don't know. I'm kind of thinking out loud here. Like, it's making a little less sense as I think about it. But, okay. Did that went nowhere then? Or is that still being talked about?
No, that went nowhere. There were some discussions about it, but I don't think it was very seriously ever considered, this ski slope.
Got it.
But yeah, I have to say, indoor skiing, I don't really get it.
Okay.
It just seems so unnecessary to me to, like, massively cool this indoor space so that you can ski. I mean, environmentally, it just doesn't really make any sense to me. And I don't know, I'd rather just go to and you can never build it to be big enough to compete with any real mountain.
That's a thing. I wouldn't think you could either. It would just be like, oh, this has to be so convenient somehow. But to me too, going and putting on all your stuff, getting your gear, it's heavy. Like, it's never that convenient. So it's just like, really go for it if you're going to do it anyway.
Yeah, and I kind of think half the charm of skiing, like in the mountains, is that you are outside in the mountains, in the...
Exactly, more than half for me.
In the sunshine, you ski for a little bit and then you sit and have a beer and sun yourself.
Exactly.
I mean, that's like half the point.
Like you're trekking, you're going between huts, or like whatever you're doing, you're seeing cool stuff.
Yeah, so the indoor thing I don't really get, but like, hey, apparently there is some kind of market for it.
Yeah. So you got to talk to that friend, the person who did a lot of primary research about this. Again, we'll link the article. Were there any other highlights for them? This is just such a cool, quirky story. I wonder if there are like other little twists or things that they were surprised by.
Yeah, so I sort of asked what was most interesting for them in researching the story. And, they said the fake snow was one big part of it, how the fake snow was made at the time, which, it does stand out.
I'm going to be processing that for a little bit too.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Sawdust soap. I'd just be like, oh, what would I be doing? Closing my eyes? Would I be you can't do that in ski. So anyway.
I know. It's amazing that they even tried that, to be fair.
Yeah.
But then she also saw it in a really positive way because she said, for her, it was actually kind of amazing what was already possible in the 1920s. So even though the fake snow, kind of wasn't very good, created some breathing issues and whatnot, they were able to set up this ski hall indoors with something that sort of approximated fake snow. And so in some ways, it's actually amazing that it was even possible at all.
Yeah. It's really impressive.
And the other thing that she mentioned that I hadn't thought about at all was she really liked sort of the intention behind this idea, which was to really bring skiing to the masses in the city.
Yeah.
And, it was sort of an attempt to make skiing really accessible to the people in the city so they didn't actually have to go to the mountains. They didn't have to travel anywhere. And so the idea was, okay, we're going to kind of bring it to you.
Yeah.
And even if it didn't last long, it did create some kind of accessibility for people that didn't exist before and at fairly reasonable prices.
Yeah, that's definitely cool, that exposure. Or it's just like, people come at different hobbies and things like so many different ways. It's like, why not make another way for them, even if it is, soap.
Look, that's like what they had to work with at the time.
Get better for them. Right.
To be fair, they tried to make the most of what they had, I guess. And that was what snow substitute was at that time.
Mm-hmm. Overall, very impressive. So I am very curious to see the pictures now.
Yeah. Look it up. The article's really interesting. I think the photos are I find them really fascinating just to see, how the whole thing looked. And actually, now that I think about it, I did look at the photos. But, you can probably also see what the people are wearing and get a sense of how the whole vibe was at the time.
Okay. I'm excited.
All right. So all you snow bunnies.
That's right. Get some fashion ideas.
Get some fashion ideas, exactly.
Right here.
Okay, so that is it for our show today. Thank you for listening. If you liked what you heard, share with your friends or leave us a 5-star review. And if you didn't like it, well, then don't worry about that review.
You can find us on social medias, Vienna Past and Pres on Instagram, or send us your episode ideas at viennapastandpresent@gmail.com.
Auf Wiedersehen, pfiat euch, Baba.
Bye.